Friends, colleagues, fellow seekers of truth. Today, I invite you to consider a profound question. What happens when the very system designed to protect us becomes the architect of our undoing? We often speak of justice as blind, but sometimes its vision is tragically distorted. Imagine a life perfectly ordinary, suddenly shattered by an accusation that makes no sense, a nightmare that feels utterly unreal. How does one navigate a world that has decided unequivocally that you are something you are not? The story we're about to explore isn't just about a crime or even about innocence found. It's about the unseen threads of human resilience, the shocking vulnerability of truth, and the quiet power of a battle fought in the shadows. Join me as we pull back the curtain on a narrative that will challenge your perceptions and stay with you long after the final word is spoken. It was a day just like any other. The morning light spilled into Mike Peterson's small apartment painting, warm patterns on his worn carpet. Mike, a young black man with dreams brewing. He was saving up every dime from his diner shifts, meticulously sketching plans for his dream garage. He envisioned himself elbow-deep in grease, restoring classic muscle cars, the kind his late grandfather taught him to love. He even had a worn photo of a cherry-red '69 Mustang tacked above his bed. Just last night, he'd laughed on the phone with his sister Maria, promising to take her for a ride in his future Mustang as soon as he got it. "Just a few more years, sis," he'd told her. "Then we're cruising down the coast." He was carving out his slice of the American dream, one honest day's work, at a time humming along to some old-school R&B savoring the quiet before his shift. Nothing, absolutely nothing, hinted that this ordinary morning would be the last one he'd know for decades. Then the pounding started. Not a knock, but a relentless, violent assault on his door that echoed through his apartment, rattling the very picture frames on the wall. Before he could even push away from his half-eaten breakfast, the wood splintered and his world exploded. Suddenly, the doorway was filled with uniforms, stark blue against the morning light. Their faces were grim, unyielding. One stepped forward, his voice a low rumble that cut through the silence like a knife. "Michael Peterson, you're under arrest for murder." The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into his wrists, stark against the sudden chill that seized his heart. Every fiber of his being screamed, "This isn't real!" But the grim faces of the officers, their voices flat and unyielding, told him otherwise. "You have the right to remain silent," one recited as if reading from a script for a play he never auditioned for. He could feel the eyes, 100 pairs of them, burning holes through his back as they led him out. Whispers snaked through the quiet street, turning curiosity into quick judgment. Mike wanted to scream to tell them all, "I didn't do this," but no words came out, just a hollow, echoing silence. My friends consider the sheer disorienting shock of that moment, to be labeled a criminal when you're utterly terrifyingly innocent. 1 minute you're free charting your course. The next, your entire existence is defined by a crime you didn't commit. This isn't just a story about a crime. It's about the terrifying ease with which an ordinary life can be stolen, all based on a single, devastating mistake. 2. The Labyrinth of Lies. Navigating a flawed system. Mike found himself ensnared in a legal labyrinth, a maze designed less for discovering truth and more for securing a conviction. The evidence against him was disturbingly flimsy, yet presented with the gravity of absolute certainty. There was the terrified witness, understandably traumatized by the horrific crime, whose shaken testimony under firm guidance pointed a trembling finger at Mike in a police lineup. The detective's voice, calm yet insistent, had guided her trembling hand. "Take your time, ma'am. Look carefully. Is this him? Are you absolutely sure this is the man?" And in her terror, desperate for answers, for closure, she'd finally whispered yes. A single, innocent yes that would condemn an innocent man. My personal reflection here. How many lives have been shattered by such honest yet mistaken certainties? What we often don't see or choose to ignore is the way these lineups are conducted. Were other men in the lineup truly similar to Mike? Was she subtly pressured? These critical questions often get buried under the rush for an arrest. And then came the chilling testimony of a man named Marcus Snake Riley, a hardened criminal eager to trade Mike's freedom for a reduced sentence of his own. He told me everything. Riley had coolly testified, his eyes darting, avoiding Mike's gaze. Said he did it, boasted about it. Imagine that. A man desperate for a deal crafting a narrative out of thin air, weaponizing desperation. My perspective is that these snitches often become the convenient missing piece in a prosecutor's puzzle, their words untraceable, their motives purely self-serving. Mike's lawyer, a young public defender named Sarah Vance, fought valiantly trying to expose Riley's flimsy testimony. Mr. Riley, what exactly were you promised for this testimony? She'd pressed, her voice sharp. But the jury, already swayed by the chilling witness ID, simply saw a confession. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a chilling echo of countless other stories where a tunnel vision can take hold in investigations. Under immense public pressure, law enforcement sometimes zeroes in on an easy suspect, often one from a marginalized community, rather than rigorously pursuing every single lead. Mike's trial wasn't just about his guilt or innocence. It was a testament to the dangerous shortcuts and deeply ingrained biases that can fester within the very system designed to protect us. It revealed a painful truth. Sometimes the pursuit of justice can be tragically derailed by the desire to win. 3. The walls close, in survival and the faint whisper of hope. The clang of the cell door was the brutal soundtrack to Michael Peterson's new reality. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years, each one a stark metallic reminder of the life stolen from him. Prison isn't just physical confinement. It's a profound psychological torment. The walls of his cell, stained with the despair of countless others, became his universe. Every day was a fight against the crushing weight of what if? What if he'd stayed home that night? What if he'd taken a different route? He saw men give up their spirits, break. He witnessed senseless violence, the brutal reality of survival. Mike fought against the despair, finding solace in borrowed books, his pen scratching against thin paper, a silent refusal to let the system break him entirely. Old Pops Jenkins, a quiet man serving a life sentence, often shared his stale bread with Mike, whispering, "Keep your mind sharp, son." That's the one thing they can't lock up. For Mike, hope wasn't a fleeting feeling. It was an active daily act of rebellion, a promise he made to himself every morning. Then a new word began to echo through the legal corridors, a whisper of scientific promise DNA. It was the early 1990s, and this cutting-edge technology promised definitive answers. For Mike, trapped in that concrete box, it was more than science. It was a lifeline, a reason to breathe again. He waited heart-pounding for the news that would finally set him free. But here's the unexpected twist that could shatter even the strongest spirit. The initial DNA tests didn't exclude him. The lawyer's voice, usually so firm, was strained through the phone line during a hurried call from the prison's noisy common area. "Mike, the DNA results are in. They don't exclude you." It felt like another punch to the gut, a betrayal from the very science that promised salvation. The walls of his cell seemed to press in even tighter, threatening to suffocate the last flicker of hope. He'd waited years for this, only to be met with another crushing dead end. My friends, imagine that despair. To be so close to the truth, only to have it slip through your fingers once more. Yet his dedicated lawyer, Sarah Vance, a tireless advocate who believed in Mike's innocence against all odds, refused to give up. "This isn't over, Mike," she'd promised, her voice laced with grim determination. "This just means we push harder. We dig deeper." This wasn't the end. It was just a deeper, more desperate dive into the labyrinth. 4. The unraveling. A decade of doubt and the triumph of truth. The years dragged on, each one a testament to the system's stubborn refusal to admit its colossal mistake. Mike was still behind bars, but the faint whisper of hope from the DNA tests fueled by his relentless legal team began to grow louder. Sarah Vance and her small team faced mountains of bureaucracy. They appealed, they filed motions, they battled prosecutors who were fiercely invested in defending the original conviction. "We've got our man." They'd argue, "The case is closed." It was a decade-long war against inertia, against the system's inherent reluctance to admit it made a mistake. My personal observation: it takes an extraordinary amount of courage and resilience to challenge the very foundations of the justice system, especially when it's dug in its heels. Then the moment came, not with a bang, but with a quiet, persistent whisper of science. The phone call. Not from his lawyer, but from a breathless investigator, their voice trembling with a mix of awe and horror. "Mike, we have him. The new advanced DNA tests, they match someone else entirely." It was a name Mike had never heard before George Harris, a man already serving time in another state for a different horrific crime. A ghost who had walked free for years, perhaps committing other unspeakable acts, while Mike, an innocent man, languished in a cage. My immediate thought, the sheer infuriating injustice of it all, burned like acid. The world tilted on its axis, finally righting itself after 2 decades of imbalance. The truth painstakingly dug from beneath layers of bureaucracy and indifference finally burst forth. Yet even with this bombshell evidence, the fight for Mike's freedom was far from over. It took another agonizing decade, 10 more years, for the legal system to fully acknowledge its error and finally exonerate him in 2004. This wasn't just a slow turn of the wheels of justice. It was a grinding, agonizing crawl. It exposed a truth many don't want to admit. The system, once it makes a mistake, is often more invested in protecting its own image than in righting a grievous wrong. But truth, as stubborn as it is, can be buried deep, yet it rarely stays hidden forever. And when it finally emerges, its power is absolute, changing lives and exposing uncomfortable realities. The echo of injustice. A system under scrutiny. And this is where Michael Peterson's individual ordeal transcends into a profound indictment of the system itself. His story, chillingly, is not an anomaly. It echoes the silent screams of countless others caught in similar legal nightmares, forcing us as a society to confront uncomfortable truths about how justice is truly administered. What happened to Mike wasn't just a series of unfortunate events. It exposed deep, systemic fissures that continue to trap the innocent. Let's peel back those layers and understand the legal vulnerabilities that allowed such a monumental injustice to occur, vulnerabilities that still linger in the shadows of our courts today. One of the most glaring legal problems highlighted by Peterson's case is the perilous reliance on flawed eyewitness testimony. Peterson was initially convicted based on an identification that was later proven to be incorrect. This echoes the tragic fate of the exonerated 5, formerly known as the Central Park 5, where flawed identifications and coerced confessions led to the wrongful conviction of 5 teenagers for a brutal assault they did not commit. In both instances, the emotional weight of a crime, coupled with flawed police procedures, created a dangerous cocktail of certainty where none should have existed. Legally, this underscores the critical need for stringent, evidence-based protocols for eyewitness identification, such as double-blind lineups and proper instructions to witnesses to minimize suggestibility and reduce the risk of mistaken identity. The law must evolve to prioritize accuracy over expediency in these crucial initial stages. Another significant legal vulnerability exposed is the unreliable nature of jailhouse informant testimony. Peterson's conviction was bolstered by a fellow inmate's dubious claims, likely made in exchange for a lighter sentence. This practice, often referred to as snitch testimony, has been a recurring theme in wrongful convictions across the nation. Consider the case of Timothy Cole, wrongfully convicted in Texas, partly due to a jailhouse informant's testimony only to be exonerated posthumously by DNA evidence. Informants, by their very nature, have a powerful incentive to lie, and their testimonies are almost impossible for juries to verify independently. From a legal standpoint, this calls for stricter regulations on the use and vetting of informant testimony, including mandatory corroboration requirements and full disclosure of any incentives offered. The inherent unreliability of such testimony often turns trials into contests of credibility rather than searches for truth. Finally, Peterson's arduous, decade-long battle for exoneration, even after DNA evidence pointed to the true perpetrator, spotlights the system's profound resistance to admitting its own errors. This inertia is not unique to his case. Across the United States, innocence organizations consistently face immense hurdles in convincing courts to revisit old convictions, even with overwhelming new evidence. The legal principle of finality of judgment often outweighs the pursuit of ultimate truth, creating a chilling catch-22, where the system would rather preserve its perceived infallibility than correct a grievous wrong. This issue demands clearer, more accessible legal pathways for post-conviction DNA testing and review, as well as a cultural shift within prosecution offices towards a proactive pursuit of justice, even if it means overturning their own past victories. In conclusion, the story of Michael Peterson is a stark reminder that the pursuit of justice is an ongoing, imperfect process. His experience, mirrored in countless other wrongful convictions, compels us to shine a brighter light on problematic legal practices like flawed eyewitness identification, unreliable informant testimony, and the systemic resistance to acknowledging error. For justice to truly be blind and equitable, these fundamental issues must be addressed with clarity, courage, and an unwavering commitment to truth, ensuring that no more innocent lives are tragically stolen. 5. Beyond the bars, redefining freedom and forging a legacy. So what does a man do when the truth meticulously unearthed finally sets him free, but the scars of systemic failure run so deep? For Michael Peterson, freedom wasn't just about walking out of a prison gate. It was about confronting a changed world, a lost youth, and the overwhelming task of rebuilding a life shattered by the very institution meant to protect him. Yet this is where his story truly becomes a beacon of hope and a call to action. The day Michael Peterson walked out of prison was in many ways just another Tuesday. But this time, the sunlight, once a distant memory, now felt blinding. The roar of traffic, the endless choices in a grocery store aisle, the bewildering array of new technologies. Every mundane detail was a stark, almost overwhelming reminder of the 2 decades stolen from him. His youth, his dreams, the precious moments with family he'd never get back. The weight of that loss was a constant phantom ache that no amount of freedom could erase. He had to learn how to use a cell phone, how to navigate a world that had moved on without him. My personal reflection. Freedom isn't just about unlocking a gate. It's about rebuilding an entire universe that was shattered. He carried the invisible scars of wrongful imprisonment, the nightmares, the distrust, the quiet fear that it could all be taken away again. It was a battle fought in his mind every single day. But here's the ultimate triumph, the true measure of Michael Peterson's spirit. He refused to let his bitterness consume him. He could have retreated, lived a quiet life, understandably so. Instead, he channeled that raw, searing pain into a profound purpose. He looked at his own shattered life and saw a blueprint for helping others. My conviction is that his story embodies the very best of the human spirit. He became a relentless advocate, his voice ringing out in legislative halls, on TV screens, and in hushed prison visiting rooms, a powerful beacon for justice reform. He tirelessly spoke out about the flaws in eyewitness identification, the dangers of unreliable informants, and the systemic biases that disproportionately affect marginalized communities. He held workshops, met with lawmakers, and mentored newly exonerated individuals. Michael Peterson's journey isn't just about a man who was wronged, it's about the incredible resilience of the human spirit, the relentless pursuit of justice, and the enduring power of one voice to ignite a movement. His legacy reminds us that while justice can be delayed, it must never be denied, and that even from the depths of despair, we can rise to inspire change and ensure a more just world for all. Because in the end, Michael Peterson's story isn't just his alone. It's a call to action for every one of us to remain vigilant, to question, and to demand a system that truly serves justice, not just conviction. Let his story echo not as a tragedy, but as a triumph, a permanent reminder that the fight for true justice is never truly over. If Michael Peterson's story resonated with you, if it stirred a sense of injustice or ignited a spark of hope, then join us. This isn't just a tale from the past, it's a mirror reflecting ongoing challenges in our justice system. Share this video to raise awareness. Engage in the conversation in the comments below. What are your thoughts on wrongful convictions? And consider supporting organizations like the Innocence Project, who tirelessly fight to free the innocent and reform the system. Your voice, your awareness, your action. That's how we ensure no more innocent lives are tragically stolen. Let's make a difference together.